tuning in. I wanted to remind you of our Road to 1,000 Subscribers giveaway that we have going on our YouTube channel. If you subscribe and have a public profile, you'll be entered to win a free RX Smart Gear original jump rope. You'll get to pick the pattern of the handles, the color and weight of the cable, and you'll be getting one of the best-selling, best-performing jump ropes out there. Every time we hit a new century mark with the number of subscribers to our channel, we'll randomly select a new winner. And our friend Dave Newman is going to throw in a little something extra for each winner. So a special thanks to our sponsor, RX Smart Gear, to Dave Newman for being such a great partner, and to you for being a loyal listener. Good luck, and I hope you are our next winner.
All right. So we are with Royce Dunne, 4-time Games athlete, 2 times on a team, 2 times individual, and head coach at CrossFit Torian. So you are father of 3, husband of 1, and Jesus first is what your Instagram says.
Yeah.
I'm interested about the husband of 1. Is that to just make sure that everybody knows you're not a polygamist?
Yeah, it's more just a joke. I just thought it was my attempt at being witty after the father of three comment. So yeah, just a bit of cheekiness.
So does your wife CrossFit?
She has in the past and dabbles every now and then, but she doesn't love it. Like she's not passionate about exercise. She would do it just for health. We got a home gym at home, so she's been obviously pregnant on and off for a lot of the last five years. So with our 3 kids, so she's been kind of taking it easy as far as doing CrossFit. But she's stayed home as well. So like driving into the gym and doing the class is not super appealing for her. Like for a lot of people, it's a funny lesson, I guess, about CrossFit. Like we say about CrossFit, CrossFit is for anyone, but it's not for everyone. Like some people just don't enjoy it. Laurie's not someone who's ever enjoyed the exercise part of it. So she'd much rather just go out to our shed and do a 10-minute workout for the health, for the exercise benefit, and get on with her day, rather than make it a whole hour, which is kind of the opposite of why most people go to CrossFit, is because they want that hour escape. So it just comes down to interest. But she's definitely in it enough to understand, what the world of CrossFit is.
And so, how did you guys meet?
We just met at a party through friends a few years ago, 9 years ago to be exact. It was just literally like, don't sound cheesy, but it was kind of love at first sight in a weird way. Like I kind of just thought, this is the girl I want to get to know, and just never look back. And was it the same for her? Yeah, that's what she confirms. She was the one who, this was before, I guess. Social media was around 9 years ago, but it wasn't like the way you met people. But at least not in my experience. But before I even got home from that night, she added me on Facebook, so she was definitely the one chasing me down in a way. But she's like that. She's very much a go-getter, and definitely pursues what she wants, and a little bit more laid back when it comes to our personal relationship. She's definitely the more forceful personality, I think.
Yeah. And you guys have 3 kids, and one is pretty new, right?
Yeah, Chloe is I think 4 months now. April 27th she was, so I can't do math. I never can keep track of the months very well in my head. I guess that makes us what we're in August now, nearly September. So yeah, 4 or 5 months. And
2 boys, is that right? Or
2 boys, yeah. So a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and then our daughter is the 4 months.
And what's the most fun you get to do with your kids?
Honestly, just the silly stuff. Like one of their favorite games is I lie on the floor and they jump into me, and then I kind of catapult them onto the couch, and they just love being thrown around, and they love to wrestle. Like they're classy boys. They just love a good wrestle, and poor Laurie cops it sometimes when they want to wrestle with mama, but she's trying to breastfeed or something, and it's just not her cup of tea. So they definitely love to when daddy gets home to do some rough housing.
Yeah, when my nephews were really little, they liked to get into a pillowcase, and I would spin them around inside the pillowcase.
Yeah,
and then
they love anything spinny. Yeah, and kids, little boys, I think, I guess little girls too, but obviously my boys, they just love anything spinny or throwy or swingy. You pick them up and swing them. They want to do this one thing he calls loop de loop, where I just pick him up and flip him end over end onto the couch, and just crazy stuff. They just love to do anything physically potential with injury, they love to do it.
And you mentioned you have a home gym, and I think on social media it looks like a mini barn, maybe like a shed. And how did that come about?
So basically, we're living in a townhouse, kind of in the city, near, close to work, because it was a good location, and we loved that place. But Jack was maybe 18 months old, and we were expecting Harry, and we thought, oh, 2 kids are going to be tough. We should start looking. Harry was born, and then when he started to crawl and walk, so maybe a year after that, that's when we started to realize like we need more space. So we started looking for houses, and we actually had friends. So we had 2 of Laurie's friends. Both had, so one girl has 2 boys and one girl has 2 girls, and all 6 of our kids are basically the same age, like a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old in every family. So it was just, and they all lived out this way. So we thought it just makes sense to look out this way. It was a bit further away from work, but we wanted to be out in the suburbs, out where you could, have a lawn and have space. And we literally looked for a place with a big shed. And we found this place, and like the shed obviously was like, yeah, that's what we need if we want to build a home gym, so I could spend more time at home training and with the family. And then we looked at the house, and the house was a dream house. So we were like, okay, this is all the boxes ticked. It's how it's supposed to be. And so we put in an offer. We got a really good price. It was during COVID, during the lockdown, so the market was technically not good. But the way our real estate agent put it to us was, look, if before COVID came about, people had plans. They had houses they want to sell and houses they want to buy, and can't wait forever. Like, people are still going to want to buy and sell, and they did. So we managed to sell our house and buy this place, and it was a super smooth process. Very grateful for it.
Yeah, it looks awesome. Is there any one piece of equipment that you would dream to put in that shed that you don't have already?
There's nothing major that I'm missing. Like basically, if I could not use anything except what's in the shed for a whole year of games training, I would be fine. I'd be able to cover every base. The only thing that, like little things that would be cool to have that are almost like vanity things would be, it'd be nice to get the pig, for example, start flipping the pig. It would be nice to, I think a pig's probably the only thing I can think of. There are a few things that I think of during the year that I'm like, oh, should I get one of those? And it's more just like, as I say, very situational stuff to train for that might come up at the games. But if you didn't have access to a pig at all, or if you only used one, like I didn't train with a pig all last year until right before the games, flipping one at Rich's house, and that was the least part of that workout for me as far as difficulty. So there are certain things you don't have to really train with, whereas like, putting your hands on a barbell or doing gymnastics, something you've got to do all year round if you want to be any good at it come the game. So no, I'm very satisfied with the shed. Very grateful.
Yeah, so they would be more like that odd object thing. And I mean, you're pretty good at the odd objects anyway, right?
Yeah, honestly, it pays to be strong and tall. With odd objects, it's one of the few, it's one of the things in CrossFit that favors a tall person. I think old CrossFit used to be very much favored the short people. You used to see at the games, it was range of motion stuff, pull-ups and thrusters. But as the sport's evolved and the kind of tests have expanded, you see now at the games, it's a complete mixed bag of athletes, like tall and short. So I think now it's safe to say there's no real favorite. Yeah, actually, now that's what I was going to say. The one, if I could, unlimited budget, the dream piece of equipment to have at the house would be not in the shed per se, but a lap pool. Having a swimming pool like on the property would be pretty pimp, and would definitely add to convenience of not having to leave the home and go out to the pool and get all sorted and come home again. Just roll outside, go for a swim. That'd be the one thing I'd add. Yeah.
Yeah, and the value of the house would go way up, right?
Yep.
All right. So I think I read somewhere that people said that you are the biggest CrossFit athlete that we have right now. You're 6 foot, 225 pounds. Is that about right?
So that's what I have on my games bio. But funny story was, right before the games, right 2 weeks out, we were at Rich's house. Rich had a couple of we were doing this big sandbag workout. He was pulling out all the sandbags. It was like a huge group of us. So we were trying to use all the sandbags he hadn't touched for a while. And they just lose their sand slowly over time, like just through the dust escaping or whatever. So Rich was weighing them all just to make sure we were having a 20-pound too light sandbag. Some of them were really far out. And then, of course, we all started weighing ourselves. And I weighed in at 232 pounds. So that was I was the heaviest athlete at the games by at least 10 pounds. I think Brent's probably the next heaviest. He's about 220, maybe 215. And he's a little taller than me. He's maybe, probably not even a full inch, maybe half an inch taller than me. But I'm definitely the heaviest. And Jason Hopper's taller than me too, but I'm definitely the heaviest by at least 10 pounds. I mean, sometimes it's 40 pounds against some of the guys.
So what drew you to this sport that really isn't for us bigger guys? I mean, the name of my podcast is The Clydesdale, right? Because I'm a bigger athlete and I appreciate other big athletes. So what drew you into this crazy sport?
Honestly, it was a similar story, I think, to a lot of high school athletes. I played sport growing up, obviously, and you kind of just, once you leave school, unless you make it into a professional like kind of situation with that sport, the sport kind of ends. Like, you know, you could do a social touch football fixtures with your mates, but like it's so hard to get adults to commit to a schedule. People have work, life, family, so you kind of just lose that structure and that. It almost like it's a given, right? All through high school, it's a given that you play sport and you know, it's a fun time on a Saturday, and then you just kind of lose that aspect. And so I was just training normal gym stuff and looking for something like that. And when I found CrossFit, it was just suggested to me as a way of just getting some inspiration for working out, like programming wise, for clients I was PTing. Just, you know, check out one of the best things about CrossFit Ball is to get this, like that the website's free. Anyone can just log on, check out these workouts, you know, unlimited like amazing resources in health and fitness for anyone to use. It's a beautiful thing that CrossFit do. And so I was checking it out and looking at the workouts, and I thought, hey, some of these look pretty fun. I should give these a try myself. They look like they'd be pretty tough. And then I just got addicted. I just thought this kind of training is just so fun. It's like you're playing a game. Every training session can feel like a little game, and which is, you know, a double-edged sword. That's why people like CrossFit, because it's competitive, but it can also get people a bit down the wrong path of where they're trying to compete every day in the WOD, rather than it. You know, there's a difference between it being friendly competition and you know, makes you feel that buzz of like getting to race, versus people just kind of like making it their obsession to like win a workout and not realizing that, hey, it's just your health and fitness. So that kind of filled that void. And then when I obviously just got more into it and realized, hey, there's a CrossFit Open, there's a CrossFit Games, and you can actually do this as a real sport. Okay, then I was interested. And as you say, like it's definitely doesn't favor a big guy, when most workouts are, as I said, like taking a barbell from the ground to overhead. Well, if you're taller, that barbell's going a lot further away, right? And you got to get yourself to the floor and back up again for a burpee. Well, you're going a lot further down and lifting a lot more weight. But I think once you get past the Open and even past the semi-finals, you'll see it at the games, especially. The variety of the test is enough that it almost goes back to being a big person sport a little bit again. And if you look at traditional sports like, you know, football and basketball and track and field, swimming, normally in traditional mindset, when you think of an athlete, you think of someone who's like 6 foot or taller, huge, you know, like big athletes, right? Like, you know, kind of like superhero kind of characters. And so I think that's there's a return of that. Like, not that the short person's out, not by any means, but it's definitely CrossFit's now like a pretty even field of athletes at the games. You see, like, you just got to get past that initial stage. You know, when you're at the gym after the Open, it's hard to program a sled pull or something like that for guys. So you end up, you're doing burpees and thrusters. Like, it's just what it is. And so you'll see the little guys excel there. But you just got to be in the mix, right? Just get to the games, and then you can really make your move as a big athlete.
You say that, but you and Jason Hopper both won semifinals, and that was before the games.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
true.
Maybe it is like it's time for the big guy to get some pub.
Yeah, I think the semifinal. I mean, especially this year, the semifinals did an excellent job of. They just went above and beyond, I guess, what people expected of those comps as far as resourcing. Like, so the two guys who run the comp in our regions. Our region is Australia and New Zealand, and the two guys who run it, they actually own the gym I work at, Mike and Jono, and they own CrossFit Torium, and they run the Torium Pro. And so, highest integrity, like as an employee there, I had no idea what the programming was. Like, not a single hint. They basically didn't even come into the gym for like 6 months. They set up their office at the Queensland Tennis Centre where the comp was hosted, and they just worked and myself and Dasha, our office admin, we ran the gym. Like we ran the gym while they did the pro. But I know those two boys, and I know what the effort and dedication they put in. Like I know that Mike had the workouts, he ran the workouts past Rich to get expert athlete info. They were required to submit them to CrossFit. So CrossFit had their say, and so there was so many checks and balances, and they worked really hard. And then Mike and Jonah just pulled out all the stops as far as creating not just good workouts that tested us, but also in resourcing things that made it a good test as well. Like not being limited by, oh, this is going to be really hard to pull off. Maybe we should just make the workout. Maybe we should sacrifice the workout to make the logistics a bit easier. It was like, no, we'll do the hard thing, even though it's going to cost us another 10 grand in whatever, feature we have to pay someone to do, or whatever level of resource we can find, and we'll get the extra gear, or we'll get the extra 20 judges we need per lane to make this thing work. And so, and I think all the semi-finals really stepped up like that in a big way. So I think, the programming has never been so good at that level of competition as it was this year. And I think you're right, as you see, it was a more fair result. Like even in our region, like I won it. 1 point behind me was Jay Crouch, who's much smaller than me as far as like, he's a what do you call a smaller athlete, 85 kilos or 185 pounds. And he's probably like 5'8", 5'9", maybe 5'10". And then Baden came third, and he's a similar stature to Jay, but maybe a bit more like strongman-y. Like he's a country boy, and he's just like amazing runner, great at pulling and pushing sleds. And so we got three basically different athletes all within a few points of each other. I think it was very balanced programming.
So you said you did sport growing up, and I read somewhere you did Australian football and tennis. Now, for us in the States, Australian football can mean a couple things.
Yeah.
Was it soccer, or was it Australian football?
Yeah, it was the actual sport is called Australian Football League, AFL. And it's very similar to Gaelic football. It's kind of like, imagine if you could play soccer with your hands. It's a really, really simplified version of it.
So when we first got ESPN here in the States, they didn't have enough programming. So the AFL was on all the time here. And I fell in love with the sport. I loved watching it. I didn't really understand it probably completely, but I just loved the way it was played. I'd love when the officials do the
goal. Yeah. The AFL is pretty cool. Like it's unique, I feel, as a spectator sport amongst the team sports, where it's more so than other sports. It's designed to really flow. Like there's very few deliberate stoppages unless they need to for the sake of the play. Like obviously in NFL, it's all by plays and downs, and then rugby is the same thing. It's done by tackles, and then in rugby league, it's done by a certain number of tackles and you hand over. In union, there's certain rules around the tackles. Soccer obviously has the offside rules, so you kind of got to play a chess match of forward and back and wait for the chance to strike. AFL, it can be a bit of a melee sometimes, a bit chaotic. It may be a bit almost like sloppy. But when two really good teams are playing, it's quite beautiful how it just keeps flowing, and there's really not many dull moments. So it's nice in that way.
Yeah, I know during COVID, it was one of the sports that came back first. And so here in the States, it actually gained some popularity again because it was something to watch.
Yeah, that's cool.
So you did that and tennis. That's kind of an odd match.
Yeah. So it was basically played AFL all through school when I was about 16, 17, which is super late to start. I started playing some tennis at a local club, just because tennis was a sport that always looked cool to me. I just thought it's fun to play socially, and I wanted to play it like a bit more just organized league. So I was like 16 playing against like 10-year-old kids who would kick my ass because they've been playing since they could pick up a racket, and I was like, this big Neanderthal who didn't know what he's doing. So it was very humbling to see it's these guys when they're making their debut at a Grand Slam and they're like 22 years old. They've been playing for about 15 years, and they're just like, it's phenomenal.
So when you started doing CrossFit, what was the point you knew that you were going to be good enough to compete on a professional level?
For me personally, that's a funny one. That was a really slight edge for me. Like it was just piece by piece. Like I did the Open in 2013 for fun, and I didn't do very well at all, like ranking wise. But I just felt like, hey, I got a lot to improve here. I can make big improvements in a lot of these areas and do better. And then the next year, 2014, was like a decent showing. And then kind of 15, 16, and 17, those 3 years were just like, they were like progress years where just every year got a little better and just set the goal slightly higher. Like 2015 was, it'd be cool to make it to a regional, which was like the semifinals back then. And then just missed out, but got really close. So I thought, okay, 16 will do it. 16 was cool because we didn't make regionals, me and CJ at the time, but then our team made it to regionals. So we thought, oh, we'll go as a team, that'll be fun. And then our team made the CrossFit Games. That was really cool. All of a sudden, we're at the games now, and we're getting to hang out with CrossFit Mayhem because they were going team. And then 17, I made it individually. And then so 18 was like, okay, maybe I can make that top 5 and go to the CrossFit Games myself individually. And so I did that. 19 and 20, obviously was on the team with Mayhem. And then this year it was back to individual because I would have gone team with Mayhem again, with Mayhem Independence, because it would have been nice to actually go to the games. We qualified last year, but we couldn't go because of COVID. They just did the individuals. It would have been nice to go with Independence, but they changed the rules again. So it was like they wanted to be teams from the affiliates, not super teams. So Chase went with Rich on the Mayhem team, and obviously big, more than 100 miles away on the side of the ocean. I went individually. We had a couple of ideas for a team in our gym, but a few of the boys that were key for the team wanted to go individual. Just even if they didn't make the games, they wanted to go to the pro individually, because we were all pretty excited about Mike and Joe getting the bid for the pro, like for the semi. We were all proud of them. We knew it was going to be great. Like we knew those boys put on the show, so we all wanted to go and experience that. And it was like a mini game. It was amazing. So I don't think anyone regrets not making a team out of our gym. I think they all liked the individual experience they got on the floor.
So you went to the games in 16 with Torian, your home gym. And then in 19, you went on like a super team with Invictus Boston.
Yeah. I was there. Well, I didn't actually make it to the games, but they asked me if I could be their what's it called? The reserve? Alternate. So I was the alternate. And so it's kind of like, by the time you get maybe like a week, maybe even less, maybe by the time you get about 3 days before the games, you know that you're in it now. Like if someone breaks their leg, you're not going to really get the alternate there in time. So it's kind of like you're committing. But the alternate's almost more for like the months leading up to the games. If someone gets injured in training, that you can have a backup. So yeah, I was there for them. And then come like the week of the games, it was like, all right, I'm just going to watch.
So in 20, you get hooked up with Mayhem, and how did that go down?
Well, I actually got hooked up with Mayhem back in 19. So I've been following the Mayhem programming since 2016. And in 2018, when I made the games, I contacted Rich and just let him know, hey, I'm one of the Mayhem athletes and I've just made the games. And Rich was like, that's awesome. Come on out to Tennessee and we'll train together and prep for the games. So I kind of did like an athlete camp with them before the games in 18. Got to know those guys really well. 2019, they needed a space, they needed a spot build on the independence team for the Rogue Invitational. So went over for that. And then I ended up doing like 2 or 3 more comps that year with Mayhem in 19 with independence. And we just couldn't clinch the spot. And so it was actually at the French Throwdown. We were versing the Invictus team, and they won the spot from that comp. And Tola just messaged me and said, hey man, can we put you down as our alternate? And I asked the Mayhem guys if that's cool, and they had no problem with it. So I did that. But then in 2020, we knew we were going to come back, bring that independence team back together and get some redemption, get that spot, which we did. We got the spot out of Wadapalooza. And then those guys came to Australia, and we did one of the Australian comps, and we won that one too. So that was awesome. And that was actually right before COVID hit. That was in like Feb. Then March was when like all the countries started closing borders. So that was like the last trip they all went on. The last time like an American could get to Australia for like the last 2 years, really. And it was pretty cool that we snuck that in, that awesome trip. And those guys after the comp, they went down to like Byron Bay for like a week or two, and they went and did some touristy stuff and really kind of soaked up the trip, which is awesome because, it hasn't been a chance to come back since. So it was a really good year. Even though we didn't compete the games and everything went kind of, everything, the world kind of went to COVID. That was still an awesome little experience to sneak in there.
Yeah, it had to be kind of a disappointment not to be able to finish off the year with that team, because you guys were really good. You had the two Mayhem teams that qualified, and it would have been cool to see both of them at the games to see kind of that grudge match that we sometimes get to see with that.
Yeah, that would have been an awesome game for sure. But it is what it is.
And so, because of those training camps and because of being on the Mayhem team, you've gotten tight with that Tennessee crew, and especially Sam, from what we hear. And so you went back this year. Now, COVID is back strong again in Australia. And let's go back to the Torian. It was during the Torian that lockdown started happening again.
Yes. Yeah. Australia. Well, the Australian government they've really made the hill they're going to die on, the fact that Australia has such a low case number. They really pat themselves on the back about keeping it a relatively low threat in this country. So they're kind of trigger happy. They're a bit addicted to the lockdowns, in my opinion. Like, when cases start spiking, it's time for lockdown, even though a spike in cases might be 20 cases. You know what I mean? Which sounds ridiculous in every other place in the world, but they're kind of proud of that. Of like, look at us, we got 100 cases total, and you guys will suck. So yeah, there was a bit of a scare with a few cases in Melbourne, and then they were going to have a lockdown. That nearly shut the pro down, because it was like doing the contact tracing, they call it, and it's like, oh, this person been to the pro? Does that mean the pro's infected? Ultimately, we followed all the guidelines that the government laid out. Obviously, we got to do the right thing, and it was all fine. Like, Mike and Jonah were sorting it out for a bit, but they gave us a go ahead. In Queensland, our state was still open, even though Melbourne was a bit in trouble. So it all went ahead, and it was all successful. And surprise, surprise, it wasn't a super spreader event. No one that I know of got COVID after the pro. But then just I guess these things happen. Like, cases come from who knows where, and so in the last kind of 6 months, Australia, a lot of the states have gone back into lockdown as the cases spike up. But it's I guess it's not as bad as it looks on TV, right? Like, I don't think it affects the average person's life. It's just, that's the government's job, I suppose, is to worry about this kind of stuff. It's just, it just seems like they're not invested in, our vaccine program rolled out way later than most countries. Like, while they were patting themselves on the back about keeping the cases low, they didn't get any vaccines mobilized. And then so the government's all not letting lockdowns end until we're all vaccinated, but you guys didn't even get the vaccines out available for us anyway. So it's just, I feel like, governments are a necessary evil, but they're also don't always do their job efficiently or effectively. But that's the nature of the beast, right? Everyone's a critic.
Do you think that this scare in Melbourne affected the attendance at the Torian?
I just honestly, with my hand on my heart, I don't think so very much. I think the average Australian is not honestly that scared of COVID. Like, I don't think anyone in the world is that scared. Like, everyone wants to do the right thing and not be irresponsible per se. But I doubt there might have been some. Of course, there would have been some, but I doubt most people are not going to go to the pro because I might catch COVID and die. Like, I don't think anyone was that worried. And we knew as well as Queenslanders that Australia has the bubble happening between states. So it was highly unlikely it would spread through Queensland because of the pains that the event organisers go to keep things clean. So it was, I think the attendance was pretty good.
Awesome. And so then you came to Tennessee to train. How was that trying to get to the States during that time?
The process to come over is pretty simple. Whoa. Sorry, that's my son.
That's okay.
The process to get over to the States is actually pretty smooth. You just apply for an exemption from the federal government to travel. You give them their reason, competing in sport. CrossFit was good about supplying us with an official invite, a letter about our sport being legitimate. And I got approved without too much fuss. You have a negative test to get on the plane, so you present your test and your exemption to the airport, and off you go. And then in America, it depends on where you go, obviously, but in Tennessee, things are pretty open, things are pretty chill. So there wasn't much issue there. I obviously wanted to make sure I wasn't going to spread COVID around the Mayhem camp and like ruin their performances. But Rich was very welcoming, and I was staying at his house, and he wasn't worried. He'd already had it, so he was effectively immune. I had a negative test, so it was all good, and we had a pretty much little bubble, our crew, up at Rich's house anyway. And then we all tested negative for games, so obviously we did something right as far as keeping ourselves safe. Coming home was just as easy, really. Like the drama was Australia has caps on how many people are allowed into the country per day, just they can control the number of people going into the quarantine and stuff. And so there was a bit of drama with like getting a flight was cancelled, and it was back on, then you were shifted to a different flight as the airlines try to almost keep up in a delay with the Australian government like hitting their cap each time and being like, oh, caps reached, so these flights will be cancelled. Rebook everyone for the next day, so on and so forth. I was very fortunate, very blessed that it went really smoothly on the way home. And once again, need a negative test to get on the plane. Whoa. And you present that and you were good. So effectively, I mean, there was a couple of gaps, I guess, in my trip, but theoretically, from the moment I left Brisbane to this current moment, I've been COVID free, which is pretty lucky considering all the flying and traveling and people I've interacted with.
And so I actually talked to Ellie Turner at the games, and she got really messed up in that whole process with her flight getting canceled and bumped around a little bit. So let me ask you this. What is that 14-day quarantine like? Do you have to stay in your hotel room the whole time? Are you allowed to go outside?
Sorry, good. Put my laptop on charge. Yes, so the quarantine. The quarantine is kind of the hallmark of Australia's COVID defence, I guess, plan. Any arriving international has to spend 14 days in this hotel room, which effectively means that even if you had COVID, by the time you can get out, you wouldn't be contagious anymore. And it has worked as far as, yes, obviously Australia has some of the lowest cases in the world. However, in my opinion, and a few people's opinions, it is a bit potentially overkill as far as you enter and you're tested a total of 3 times whilst in quarantine, and then you get a test 2 days after you leave quarantine, like wherever you go on to, whether you're going out into Sydney or back into Queensland or whatever, you test again. And so with 4 negative tests across the 2 weeks, you almost feel like if this testing is worth anything, which potentially you can get false negatives and so on, but if the testing is worth anything, it should be maybe 2 negative tests, 1 when you arrive and 1 3 days later, and then off you go. There's no need, in my opinion, to hold people in there for 14 days if you trust the testing. And if you don't trust the testing, then why bother testing people in quarantine? Just put them in there for 14 days and don't worry about it. So it's, like I said, easy for me to criticize, but it's not too bad of an experience, but it's definitely a strange feeling to feel like you've done something wrong. You feel like a criminal being locked up for 2 weeks, but it's like, well, I know it was my choice to go overseas, but the government did give me an exemption. Like, they approved me for this. It wasn't like I did something wrong. They knew I was coming back. They said, yes, I can go, and yes, I can come back. So, I feel like it's a bit of a funny situation, but it's pretty sterile. Like, you're in this hotel room. You don't even get given the key to the hotel because you can't leave. So why you need a key for? Like, don't worry about it. And you can't even go out to the hallway. You're allowed to open the door to get like your food and like deliveries and stuff from in front of your door. You have to wear your mask just to open the door. That's the rule. If they catch you opening your door without wearing a mask, you can get fined the same fine as if you were like trying to leave quarantine.
Wow. That's
security
crazy.
Guard is posted at the elevator on every level. So if anyone tries to do a runner, they're gonna lock you down. It's pretty full on. It's like little prisons. And in fact, the federal government, our government is building specialized facilities now. They're going to service the quarantine facilities, so we have to keep using hotels. And so they're effectively building quarantine prisons that will their only purpose will be to lock people up when they arrive 14 days. And Ellie, man, I thought Ellie got screwed. So South Australia, where she's from, that state, I don't know what their issue is, but they won't accept your quarantine when you arrive as proof of basically Ellie was going to have to quarantine twice. She had to land in Sydney, which they grab you off the plane, like you can't leave. You have to quarantine right there on the spot, 14 days in Sydney. And then she was going to fly back to Adelaide, and they're going to make her quarantine again 14 days. She managed to get an exemption to serve that second quarantine at home. So thankfully she's back home, like has a little home gym, fresh air, like can just, basically a forced 2-week holiday at home. Can't leave still, but people can deliver her stuff. Whereas in Queensland, much more reasonable. When I arrived at the Queensland airport, I present my document from the New South Wales Police saying I've done my quarantine, I have my negative COVID test, and receipts to prove that I got a COVID safe taxi and went straight from the hotel to the airport. Didn't go out to the Sydney Zoo or something stupid and have a good time. And Queensland go, yes, that's acceptable. You can come in and no quarantine for you.
Yeah. Okay. So all that happens, and you're away from your family for how long?
All said and done, it was about 7 weeks.
And so I know that you need to focus because you're training for the games, but how hard is that on you as a dad and a husband?
It went through like different peaks and valleys, I guess, of being, pretty messy about it. When I was first leaving Australia, I was like, oh no, I've done the right thing. Like, I don't think I can do this 7 weeks away. I don't think I can handle it. Once I got to Tennessee, obviously, like that Mayhem crew was like a second family, and so it was really comforting to be around Rich and Hillary and their kids, and we just stayed busy. Like we're training all day, we're focused. There's a good group of people there, so that makes it quite easy. Like it's only at night when I would like FaceTime the boys as they're waking up back home in Australia, and it was like pretty tough to be like, see their faces and not get to hug them and stuff. But it was easier to focus because like I had a team behind me. We were all focused on the same thing. We're staying busy, and we had a goal. So the time kind of went quick. The days went by quick. Before you knew it, we were at the games. And then that was just like, even if I was home during the games, I would barely, like for the pro, for example, I barely saw my family over that weekend. So I'm away all day, come home, go to bed, get up before they get up and head out. So the game's just like a normal comp to me. And then the 2 weeks in quarantine, you'd think it'd be the worst, but there was something like so comforting about being back on home soil, being on the same timeline, only being an hour away from them at most, and just be able to, when I FaceTime them, it's the same time, it's their morning, it's my morning, and it was just, that was quite nice. And that quarantine time did pass pretty quick. And then before I know it, back home, and the minute I walked in the door, within an hour of being home and kind of catching up and unpacking and stuff, it was like I never left. Like it's just straight back into the good times. So, it's always easier on the other side of it. So we get through it. On the front side of it, it feels impossible, but once you're through it, it was like, I'm glad I did that. That was definitely worth it. And now we're all back together.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The timeline difference had to be huge. I mean, just doing an interview with you, and I've interviewed a couple other Australian athletes. It's really hard because it's really late here, and you're just getting up, and that's going to be tough for the kids.
Are you East Coast or West Coast?
I'm East Coast.
Yeah. So even worse, I think. Yeah, because you're the furthest ahead in the country. Like the West Coast is behind you by 3 hours, right?
Yep.
2 hours. Yeah. So I think we're about 16 hours apart. So Tennessee is the central time zone. So Central is 15 hours ahead. 15 hours behind Australia. So when I'm going to bed, like 9, 10 p.m., it's the next morning at like 8 a.m.ish for the kids, or like 6 a.m.ish. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and so we talked to Sam, and he told me to ask you that what was your favorite moment in training for the games in Tennessee? I'm assuming there's a story there, but
did he mean this ironically? Yeah, was he setting me up? Was this a joke? There was one incident that we all fondly remember. It was like one of the, I think probably the last week out before the games, and we'd all it's so funny. We always all these inside jokes, but we were entering what we call taper week, knowing full well there's no such thing as a taper week when it comes to Rich Froning. And even Rich himself now that he's a bit older, he's a bit more of the mindset of like, oh, maybe we should just chill out a bit. But then Hayley is like a young Rich Froning. Like she is a go-getter. She is like, there's no like slacking off with Hayley. Like she's motivated. So we're doing this workout. It was like me and Tyler were partners. Sam and Luke were partners. Rich and Hayley were partners. And you just do 1 for 1. It was pretty cruisy, like on paper. It was 21 cow, echo bike, 15 burpee box jump overs, and then 9 sandbag cleans. And you could do that. You could do that kind of moderate pace. It wouldn't be too bad. But obviously, it gets into a bit of a race. Everyone's trying to push, and it was just, for some reason, just with all the fatigue of the last couple of weeks of training and just, you know, how we were feeling, it was just really sucky. Like, we'd get through a round and just kind of like, sitting down on the bench, like Tyler would start spiking, and I'm just like thinking, oh man, this sucks. Like, I'm in so much pain. And we didn't know how many sets we were doing. Richard said something like, oh, we'll do like 6 to 8, like maybe just 6, per week. And Haley was like, in the middle of it, she's like, I'm going to do 8. But at first she said, I'm going to do 10, which is like, we're not doing 10. That's too many sandbag cleans. It's like, all right, I'm doing 8. And Sam was like, no, we'll do 6. And Haley, and basically they were bickering like brother and sister. But basically it ended when Haley just goes, fine, you do 6, I'm doing 8. And Sam was like, so he did 8. And I'm in the back of the room, me and Tyler at the back of the rig. We couldn't hear any of this. I'm just like looking at Rich being like, so how many are we doing? Rich just keeps going, ugh. Anyway, at one point we finally hear that we're doing 8. And I was just like, just good to know, like 2 to go, all right, let's go. But I'm in the back here joking. I was joking later with Sam. I'm thinking to myself like, hey, I'd be happy with 4, guys. Let's just do 4 rounds. Like, this sucks. So that was like, yeah, it was at the time it was like not funny, but like later on, like a couple hours later, we were doing a podcast actually. We were talking about it, and it was it's just classic. Like, that is the hijinks you get up to in the barn when like it is really a mental test. Like, it's not letting you know how many rounds we're doing, like deciding on the fly. It is a good test. Like, you get that frustration and that emotion is boiling over, and I'm in the back here, negative self-talk, like, oh, I can't do this, and Sam's like, I don't want to do more, I want to stop now, and Haley's like, let's do more, and it's good because it gives you a safe space to practice like freaking out in a workout and just dealing with it, and like everything's going wrong, we don't know what we're doing, and you know, everyone's like upset, but it's good, like it's working that competitive what happens on the floor when things don't go right. Are you going to fall apart? Are you going to like just put your head down and keep working, and then at the end you feel better for it? So it's kind of like, yeah, pretend like practice meltdowns, I guess, and I think it's part of the secret to building like good athletes is that you don't get everything to go your way. Like, that little bit of uncertainty when we start the workout, not really knowing how many steps we're going to do, it gives you a bit of a sick feeling in your stomach, like, oh man, like when will this end? Like that uncertainty is good because you feel that a lot in the CrossFit Games.
So what's it like? Like, a lot of us don't get the opportunity to work out at the barn, right? I've been to Mayhem, but I've never been to the barn. What's it like getting to work out with that crew pretty regularly?
It's super humbling for starters, just because like you just with a high caliber of athletes, and it's so concentrated. Like, there's no one there that sucks. Like, everyone is awesome. You're not going to get given an inch. So like, it's like doing a mini games every day in training, because you're like this hot heat of amazing athletes. So super humbling in that way, but also super motivating because like everyone's a competitor, but we're also family. It's kind of like us versus everyone else. It's Mayhem versus the rest of the field. So it's very collaborative. Like, you know, we're getting encouragement from each other and help. And like, you know, I'm trying to beat Sam, he's trying to beat me, but then he's like, you know, when I'm starting to fall apart in a workout, he's like cheering me on, and or I'm trying to give him a tip on how to hold the barbell better, or who knows what. But like, there's a lot of collaboration. So it's super humbling, but also super inspiring and just really motivating. Like, the kind of volume we do, like I probably wouldn't get through that volume. If I did get through that volume at home, it would take me longer in the day to do it. But it's just so motivating with the group to like get in there and rip in and attack the workouts, and you know, you're resting less than you thought you would, and it's really good.
So how much better of an athlete have you become because of your relationship with Rich and that crew?
It's almost hard to quantify, but I say, like, I mean, like I said, I did Mayhem programming since 2016 exclusively. So that alone I credit with getting me to the games in the first place. And then from 18 through to 21, in the last 3 years, going from, I think I was like 34th in 18, like fifth last basically, to being able to punch into the top 20, came 16th overall this year, but finished 2 different days, like finished the day in the top 10. So I was pretty proud of that as well. And once again, I credit that to the programming and to the environment. Like, the difference between 18 and now has been obviously just more years of doing the programming, but then also being physically around the crew more. So getting me to the games in 18 was the programming. Getting me a great result at the games was the association, the learning, and like the osmosis, you know, what's the word? The not obvious kind of unseen lessons you learn from like just the mindset and the deliberate nature of attacking a workout. Like not just Rich won't do any workout just to go through the motions. Like it's when the clock starts, like it's deliberate. Like this is time to get better for the next 10 minutes, 20 minutes, hour. My goal is to get better, not just tick the box, just to say I did the workout, you know, just so I can post on social media how much volume I've done. Like the volume's irrelevant really. The volume just happens by automatic because Rich is so fit. He needs that much volume to kind of get a response. It's about being deliberate with, I'm doing this for a result. And that's a huge game changer in training.
So you also, in your Instagram, say Jesus first. It's no secret that Rich has that same philosophy. Does your faith grow when you go to Tennessee?
100%. So I consider Rich a mentor in obviously CrossFit. He's one of the best in the world, definitely better than myself. And one of the things that attracted me the most to his program and to kind of following his example was that he's a Christian and a super outspoken one. And everyone, he said, like, it's no secret, everyone knows it, which is kind of, if you're a real Christian, everyone should know it. Like you're supposed to witness. And then obviously I have 3 kids now, but back at the time when I first started getting into Mayhem programming, I didn't have any kids. Rich and Hillary had just started their family. And so he was kind of a few years ahead of me and career-wise ahead of me in CrossFit, like better than me. He was someone of faith who I learned a lot from, just reading his book and just his experience. And then he was also, you know, a young family, him and his wife. So we were fortunate enough when we went over in 18, I was able to bring Jack, who we only had Jack at the time, and my wife Laurie, and Laurie hung out with Hillary a lot, and Jack went to play with Trice, and it was a nice little family trip as well. So yeah, I consider Rich and Hillary good examples and mentors in all aspects of life, faith, fitness, and family, not just that he's a good CrossFitter. And so definitely I always come back. It's just good to hang out with good people. Like fellowship among Christians is a very important biblical principle, and it's just always amazing to have fellowship with these good people. You know, Tasia, I learned so much from her spiritually. Luke P, awesome bloke and a really good Christian. So it's truly a great little crew there doing some great work. The Mayhem mission stuff, it's very inspiring.
And so you looked at Rich as a mentor, and now we know that Sam looks at you as a mentor and like a big brother. And so how does it feel to pass on that mentorship to another younger athlete now coming up in the sport?
I'm super humbled because honestly, I'd say probably Sam is actually fitter than I am. So it's I probably get more out of training with him than he gets out of training with me. But I guess like I'm just older, I suppose. So there's wisdom that just comes from experience, and I've just happened to have had a few more experiences than Sam, I guess. So I'm super humbled that he finds value in some of the perspectives I have to share. But at the same token, it's most of what I know I've learned from watching Rich and others in the sport, and Scott Panchik and those guys have come before us. And so I feel like it's a natural progression for the older generation. It's the whole stand on the shoulders of giants kind of thing. You just the next generation always learns from the one before it, and I'm just humbled and proud to do my small part in that line.
Well, we'd be remiss not to talk about this year's games. You had an awesome performance, your best in your career. You win the Torian Pro, you make it to the games, you finish top 20. How psyched were you after the second day to know you got into the top 20 and you were going to get to lift that heavy barbell on Saturday night in the Coliseum?
Yeah, honestly, when that snatch was announced before the games, and we realized after Castro did his announcement that the snatch was going to be after the cut to 20, it became like a literal goal of mine to I've got to make that top 20 so I can do that event. Like I just have to get to that event. I'll be heartbroken if I'm there in the stands watching everyone snatch and I couldn't be a part of it. So that second day for me, the first day didn't go badly, but the second day was really where I made some moves and got most of my top 5s, and that was super rewarding. That was like as the saying goes, it's the hard work pays off. Like, it's not just obviously you have to execute on the day, but it's the whole year of training come to a culmination. Like, the performance you get that day isn't because you just went out there and wanted it really badly. It happened because you put the hours in all year to be that fit, to be that, have that much endurance on the rope climb, for example, or to whatever it is. And then you manage to still execute it on the day, like you use your potential. But you've built this kind of result all year round. So it's super rewarding. And then, just this phenomenal amount of relief that night when I was like, hang on, mathematically, I can't be cut. Like, if I come dead last in the run, funny story. If I come dead last in the run, I can't drop below 20th. So it was like awesome. Like, so tomorrow's gonna be a good day. The run is not my favorite event, but then event 11 is still unannounced, but something cool in the Coliseum, and then the snatch is going to be an awesome time.
So what was that like? We hear the Coliseum is loud, that those 1 rep maxes always get the crowd going. You finished second in that, correct?
Yes.
So you're right there till the end. You got to go to the single platform. What was the feeling like getting to lift in front of that crowd?
The first kind of 10 lifts or so on the, 5 lifts on the double platform, that was just more nerve-wracking than it was exciting, because it was a long wait between lifts, big rotation. It's very like high pressure. It's very much like a real weightlifting competition, which I'm fortunate enough to have done quite a bit here in Australia. Listed at the Australian Nationals a few times, and so I'm kind of used to that pressure and that game. Weightlifting, I don't understand. It's really a strategy game of like, because there's a specific order in how lifters come out from who gets to lift next, and you can play with that order and mess up your competitors by moving your weight selection around. It's really chaotic. Of like, it's not like in CrossFit where you can just lift when you feel like it. Like, you are playing someone else's game, and then when you step out on the platform, everyone's looking at you. You've got 3 judges who just can't wait to push the red button to decline your lift. So it's a high pressure situation. And I've been in that situation before, so that helped me a lot with the nerves of like, hey, we're all on the bench here, like we have to lift, but like I'm ready to go now, but there's like 8 more people in front of me, I can't go yet. And then you only have 20 seconds. If you miss it, you're kind of screwed. And so that was just more nerve-wracking. And then when the crowd thinned to only 10 of us, and we moved to the big platform, A, it's a big relief because you've made top 10, and then B, you got a bigger window to lift with, which even though you theoretically shouldn't need more time, ironically, I did miss 1 lift, so I needed the window. But it just made you feel like you had a safety net, in which case you just give the confidence to go a little harder. So that was when it started to get fun. It's like, okay, this is pretty cool. Like, here we are, we're all on the one platform. The crowd's phenomenal. Like, the fans are so cool. And so it was like, all right, this is where you get to really just enjoy it now. Every lift after this is a gift.
Yeah. So we talked to a few athletes from the games, and we asked them the question, what was your favorite moment? And many of them, it's not really the one that they finished the best in, but it was a moment that they had a personal kind of breakthrough. Did you have any of those moments at the games?
Yeah, that's exactly the same for me. And I think that once again, it comes back to what we're saying about like it's all the training from the whole year paying off. Like, you want to see the hard work make a difference, and not necessarily your wheelhouse stuff. And also, you feel, I personally, and I think a lot of athletes agree, you feel more valid about a good performance in a workout that technically you shouldn't be good at. Whereas if it's a gimme, like if it's something that you're known for, famously good at, it's kind of like, yeah, I win's a win, but I get lucky with a good workout. It's when the workout's not good for you or doesn't look good for you, and you smash it, that you're like, okay, I'm actually fit. Like, I did this. And for me, that event was the event 8, the handstand walk. Now, I'm actually pretty good at handstand walks. I consider them one of my better movements. But you don't know how you stack up against a field of like, all great athletes. And a lot of those guys are former gymnasts, and it had the extra curveball of the parallel bars. And we had that in 2018 as well. And I didn't finish that event. Like, the parallel bars threw me for a loop, and I didn't manage to get across them the first time. And then after that, I couldn't my stamina had gone. I couldn't pull it together. So this time I actually just had a very calculated pace along the handstand walk, broke up virtually every obstacle. It was kind of one of the last to get to the far end, and then finished second in my heat behind Justin Madeira. So beating out guys like Janikowski, Goodmanson, Bellner, who are all really good gymnasts and on their hands. and fourth overall for that one, like another top 5. So that was probably my proudest of like, yeah, that was cool. And no one, you know, not that I'm bad at handstand walking per se, but you just wouldn't look at the biggest guy on the field, the heaviest guy on the field, and think he's going to crush the handstand walk. I would have loved to have seen how much my parallel bars were bending under my weight because it would have looked interesting, I reckon. But that was pretty cool for me.
You actually read my mind, because I don't think people realize those parallel bars are not stiff. They bow pretty well. And that's the difficulty of going across those. You being the heaviest athlete, you probably had the most bow in those parallettes, and doing that well. That's awesome, because a lot of people on the way back, that's where they stumbled.
Yeah, so on the way over was the first thing we did. You were pretty fresh. You could really take the whip. On the way back, when you were tired, you didn't have much margin to error. So if the bar would whip in a weird way, it would really throw people off. And in 2018 is what got me. So we had practiced parallel bars. Like Rich had been doing that a lot and programming that in Mayhem. And I'd set up like, you know, little short parallel bars at the gym. And I could do it pretty well. But then what I didn't anticipate was that flex in the bar. And it's not even that hard really balance-wise. It just psychs you out if you're not used to it. So that's what got me in 18. In 2021, I was ready for that and they would tackle it a lot more. But the reason for that bow is it's safety, right? So in 2018, I stacked it. I came down sideways and just basically landed across the P-bars, like my whole body weight. And they basically just bounced me off, and I didn't even feel it. It was like fine. Like otherwise I would have broken a rib. It was solid. So they're definitely bendy on the safety. I'm glad they are. But like I said, it's just that extra curveball. If you're not prepared for it, it'll psych you out. So awesome for me to get redemption on that as well. I was proud of it.
So my last question, and actually I barely even looked at my notes. We just kind of talked. My last question is, how do you balance everything in your life? How do you balance your faith, your fitness, your family, being a dad, being a husband, and being a CrossFit coach and athlete? How do you find time for all of that?
$1 million question, I guess. And honestly, I think it just comes down to seasons of life is the expression, I guess, of like, I mean, right now with my kids, they're pretty young. Like they themselves don't play any sport or go to school or anything like that yet. So like time with family is just literally like fun time. Like to them, it's all the same whether we're riding bikes in the park, you know, pushing them on the swing in my gym, setting up that little pull-up bar, mucking around on the living room, like whatever. It's just time with them. Versus having to, you know, like I know Rich, for example, has to now balance like taking Lakeland to soccer on Saturdays, and so like he's starting to like have to adapt his training, which he never would have done back when he was individual. Now having to like take a back seat for the kids, right? So that'll be a different season of life when you get there. But I'm pretty lucky with the kids now being like they just want to run around on the gym mats in my gym while I do a workout, and they think that's fun. And then same with my wife, like she knows what I'm trying to do and career wise, and 100% supports me. And so, you know, we just make time for that family balance outside of prime workout times. It's made me get more organized as well. Like I just have to take a chance to go train when I have the chance, so that we can then have family time later, versus what would be more of a luxury for me, which is just like waiting around until I feel motivated and, you know, hit the workout later on or whatever. It's like just having that discipline to be like, no, get this done like it's your job, so that we can go and actually have some family time later or whatever. And so we did that yesterday. Hit a workout in the morning when I didn't feel like it, so that we could then go up to the coast and hit the beach with the family and with Laura's parents, and had a great day. I'm super glad. And then work-wise, honestly, work is just so supportive. Like the boys, you know, they're so good with helping me out with schedules. I can keep the training going. The touring members are like some of my best fans, and without their support, I wouldn't have financially made for the games this year, especially because of the price of COVID. So, you know, I think it's just everyone's aligned and wants to see me do well. And so I'm super grateful that everyone is pulling for me, and it makes the balance pretty easy, honestly. And then faith-wise, that kind of to me is like the start. It's the attitude I approach everything with. Is like, is this am I following God's will in this? Is this what He wants for my life, or am I doing this for my own glory? And they're not mutually exclusive, but I'm not the best at it, but I always try to make sure it's happening for the right reason first, and then it'll benefit me in just the way it's supposed to, because God loves me and he wants me to have the best for me. But the best for me might not be what I think it is, but it'll always be the best thing for me. Just got to trust in God and move in the way that I feel like he's pulling me. You know, for example, we had a lot of prayer about the trip to the games and whether it was the right path. And basically the absolute unheard of smooth run that I had of like getting all the testing back on time, negative tests, flights were fine. I got home with virtually no drama, completely negative tests again, so forth. That to me is evidence that I was that this is what God wanted me. It was my purpose. Versus if I tested negative and had to pull out. I'm not saying that people who tested negative aren't doing what God wants in their life. I'm just saying it's relative to me. I'm making sure I'm on the right path and doing it for the right reasons, and not just chasing my own dream at the expense of my family. So that gives me and my wife confidence that we're doing the right thing and we're setting up our family and life balance the right way.
Well, that's awesome, Royce. This has been a blast. I'm so glad we got to connect. I want to thank you for coming on. I have a million other questions, but I want to respect your time and let you get back to that family and that balance.
Well, good. You guys do a part 2 later.
All right. Sounds good, man.